Okay, how many beats are going to be in a measure this time? 3, still 3. But what kind of note is going to get the beat? A half note, right. Remember I said sometimes we have different note values that we're counting, not just quarter notes. So in the case of 3/2 time, you might see a measure like that. And we would count 1, 2, 3. Right? We're still counting threes. We're still going to have 3 beats in each measure. It's just that now a whole beat is going to be a half note, and a half a beat is going to be a quarter note, right? So this same rhythm in 3/4 would look like that. They'd sound the same. This, 1, 2, 3, and this one, 1, 2, 3. They sound exactly the same. So why do you suppose we have note values that are like half notes in the bottom of our time signatures? Well, there are 2 reasons, and they're actually kind of contradictory to each other. One is that sometimes it implies to the musicians to take a slower pace. So sometimes we write things with a half note as the note value just because we feel as musicians that they're longer notes, so we take a slower pace. The flip side, or the opposite, is sometimes we want to subdivide our notes into lots of parts, and we don't want to have to write 32nd notes and 64th notes, right? So if I had wanted to have a measure like this, it would be a lot easier to write that in 3/2. Instead of these 64th note, 32nd notes, or here I even have 64th notes, I would just write sixteenth notes, that would be a little bit easier to read. So that's another reason we sometimes use a half note instead of a quarter note. Another reason, interestingly enough, is that in earlier music, the half note was considered the standard note value. We think of quarter notes as being what's normal now to count, but in the 16th century, it was actually considered a subdivision, and half notes were considered the standard beat value. In that case, in early music, you might see a note value like this. That note value is worth 2 whole notes, and you can see a picture of that in your textbook. What time signature would you find the double whole note in? 4/2. You would find it in 4/2 because in 4/2 you would need 2 whole notes, right? 4 half notes or 2 whole notes to fill up a measure. So you would use a double whole note. This time signature is not very common in modern music though, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Sometimes you also find music that has an 8th note as the note value. So for example, you might find 3/8. And here, we can rewrite this rhythm in 3/8. Take a moment and see if you think you can write this rhythm so that it would sound the same in 3/8 time. Hopefully, you wrote something like this. Is that what you wrote? Good. We're going to attempt to clap this one now. Are you ready? Take a moment to look at it. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. How'd you do? Not very well? Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now sometimes when reading more complicated rhythms like this, people like to use different kinds of words or syllables to help them with the rhythm. And you have 2 of these systems in your book, so I'm going to talk briefly about these 2 systems. You may choose one or the other. The first, which is probably the most common, is just using numbers and things like and. So if we use that, we would just say 1, 2, and then usually you learn 2e and a, so then this would be like a, 3, and 4. 1 and a, 2e and 3, 4. Okay, so that's one system that some people like. Let's try it. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and a 2e and 3. Okay, that's one system. The system we use here in our ear training classes, for those of you who think you might take one, is a little different. We call quarters ta. This would be ta. We call eighth notes ta, ti. And we call 16th notes taka, tika. So we would have ta, tika, and here, can you figure out what it would be? I said 16th notes were taka, tika. This would be taka, ti. Is that what you got? And this one would be tonka. We usually use an M for the dots. Let's try using that system to see if we like it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, tom, ka, ta, ti, ta. Ta, tika, taka, ti, ta, ah. Well, you may find you like one or the other. You don't have to use either one for this class, but it's good to know they're there because they do help the more rhythmically challenged of us figure out rhythms. I know that for myself, this bottom method of counting really helped me out a lot, and I still use it sometimes when I come across a difficult rhythm.